Hey, what's up, gamers? It's your boy. so, yeah, I actually got a couple of announcements, and it's gonna be a slightly different video than the other ones that I've made. So, announcement-wise, I started developing a game with a friend, right? So, I'm probably gonna be posting some stuff, and this is actually in relation to that game, one of the characters that I'm making for it. I also opened a Patreon, which I'll link at the end. I'll probably talk about it briefly towards the end. So yeah, let's get started with this video. Alright, so basically what I'm doing here is gonna be showing you guys my process for making a zombie, right? So I started with a base mesh that I've made a long time ago, right? It has separate subtools for the eyes, and it's not like 100% anatomical correct. It's kind of like a stylized version of it. So anyway, start with that. I usually add a whole bunch of geometry, and as you can see here, I have like a whole bunch of like different subtools, all with random names. I don't really rename them, although I should, and I usually do rename them when I'm like working with other artists, so they could find things easily. So yeah, I start with the mesh. I add geometry by subdividing, just Control D and ZBrush. Then I decided I wanted to mess with the skull anatomy like a little bit and show something, so I brought in this other tool, which is just anatomically sculpted skull. Um, and it also has like a lower jaw, but I didn't really need it, so I just separated it. And within, as you can see, it's made out of many polygroups. I didn't make this skull. It was a free brush pack that I got a while ago, like for keywords that had like all these sort of anatomical things, and they're pretty good as reference. And as you're gonna see, they can be used for like meshes and stuff. Okay, so having that out of the way, let me just frame back again. Okay. So I decided I wanted to mess with the character's anatomy a little bit. So I turned on the skull, start kind of sculpting away some of the flesh. I knew that I wanted the character to have eyes, so I put eyes. So I guess the eyes that came at the beginning with this tool, and then just started sculpting away using my various like trim dynamic brushes and my move brushes, just to get a general idea what I was working on. Then at this point I realized that the skull is kind of poking out, because again these are a little bit weird proportions, but luckily for the game that I'm making, it's more of a stylized sort of thing. So I switched over to this skull, and this skull, so my bad. Yeah, this skull, I cut out a chunk and then I just closed the hole using the tools here, and like here modify topology and close holes. Um, so yeah, so anyway, I decided to start doing all these things. Should be this one, yeah. So I moved into this model. Another thing that I do in my process is I make a lot of iterations and copies of the models. As you can see, they're like slightly different. So these two should be the same, because this is the first one I did with the modifications. Then this one I tried to start a little bit more detail. Actually, I don't know what's going on. Okay, yeah, so I started in more detail to these. Um, and then I started trying to get the emaciated look, always keeping in mind like the anatomy, and just started moving things very freely at this stage, right? That's the advantage of having base mesh, so you can just get right on it. And this is not like 100% representative of the end product. It's just slowly chipping away at the model, if you will, until like it starts doing what I wanted to do. Then after that, I did my first like layer of anatomy pass. And for this, I like having I have like a 3D printed anatomy model that I use for reference. But recently, I discovered this really cool feature. It's called I think it's in Transform.
Split screen, and it just split screen everything else you have, right? So say I have this other anatomical model, and depending where you place it, it just you can use it as like complete reference for all these things, because this is 100% accurately anatomically accurate. It's from Raf Grassetti, the art director of God of War. He has this whole anatomical model for free and as well, so you can download and then just integrate it into your workflow as a C tool. Anyway, let me turn that off. Right, so I was doing like the initial anatomy pass. Then I just decided to continue that to the rest. I forgot to make another sub 2 for the legs. But at this point, I didn't really need it, so I just kept going with it. And also, as you can see, the main difference between this and this is how I smoothed it out and I got it closer to the actual anatomical shape. Then after that, I did like a more in-depth look at all the muscles that I had sculpted, and just using my damn standard brush, I started like sculpting in the detail of like where the actual muscles go. This is one of the most useful brushes in my opinion as far as like blocking at your anatomy. There's a lot of different ways you can do it, like just using the main standard brush, but for me damn standard works better to literally physically outline where the muscles go and where the muscles connect. So yeah, I did that a bit. I also started messing with the hands, making them bony, like removing some of, because hands are mainly tendons and bone, right? They don't have a whole bunch of muscle. So if you're making an emaciated character, there's not a lot to showcase, or rather if you're making a really buff character, you can't really make the fingers all that buff. Yeah, so I was doing this like anatomy pass. By this point also I had decided, since the character was not really gonna have a lower jaw, I was just gonna kind of have this weird cut off effect that look cool. And then I made this tongue. To make the tongue, I just took like the sphere, stretched it, and then added some of this quick little detail. Most of the detail work for the tongue itself is gonna be going through the texture, so it doesn't matter if it's kind of rough at the moment. And as you can see, there's like this pixelation in between the lines, because this model is still relatively low res, and that's done so I can still easily manipulate it while making it so I can still get my basic shapes, you know. And after that, I added more, I guess, definition to the model as far as like polygons, and then I started going in for my actual muscle passes using my clay buildup tool, because it gives it this really nice effect, very much to like what muscle fibers are. So you can just start laying on top, and depending on the intensity you have it can either make a huge difference as far as like how big the model muscle definition was or how small. And I know you might be thinking it's a little bit weird to have like a jacked, emaciated zombie, but the point of me doing this is so I can get proper anatomy, because it's one of those things where most people instinctively know what the human body looks like. Not to say they know how to sculpt it or anything, but we're very good at detecting when things are off and things hit that uncanny valley. So it's very imperative to make sure the anatomy details right. As you can see, I went and added more. I guess took away more mass from the fingers. And as you saw right now, the bottom of the foot didn't really have any detail because it doesn't matter for my purposes. You're never going to see the character's bottom of the foot, but here I did start taking away some of the detail. And I was just having a lot of fun with it, just blocking out all the anatomy. Some of the things are exaggerated, right? Like this area was not how it would be in real life for a zombie. It's just to accentuate like hip bone. And in my experience, that gives it a more like readable sort of outline. So yeah, they just continue to block out the anatomy. And this is like I showed you guys I do a whole bunch of copies of the same thing, except this started smoothing out the muscles, and I was pretty happy with it. And then I went away to do some other things, and then I came back and I was like, well, this putting the zombie into perspective, and I was like, well, this zombie's still really jacked. So I smoothed some of the I guess I skipped a couple. Yeah, so I smoothed some more of the muscles, and then I added more geo. You can say this thing is like drowning with geo, right? It says how many, I think it's a 0.00 something million polys. Point is a whole bunch of polys, and you need that if you're going to be adding details like this, right? So for these I have this preset things that I sculpted, and I made alpha maps, which is these. So you could just click and drag. These are the default ones, and they start adding, they can be useful for adding definition, right? So I want to add this weird, gross, pimply things to the shoulders, and generally what you can do in games is sculpt pretty much everything symmetrical, and then just add these other details for parts that when you UV unwrap them aren't going to be stacked in each other. I know a lot of people like to do stack the arms and the hands. I'm not sure if I'm gonna do that at this point, but I sculpted with the reasoning of I'm not gonna do it because this is gonna be one of the characters you see the most, someone to have the most variation. So as you can see, these aren't completely symmetrical. Some of these little damaged bevels and scars and all those things aren't symmetrical. The veins aren't symmetrical, and I want to give the zombie a look of it being sewn together. So I started sculpting the stitching in the hands, the arm, and the leg, and lower leg. It's kind of more for me. It's very much a playful process, as you could say, of figuring out where all these minor details are gonna go. So I just try things out, see if I like it. Zoom out, step back, make copies, and spin them around until I feel like it's where I want it to be. For the face, I just added a whole bunch of these gross veins and made this face look a little bit melty. I'm not sure exactly lore wise, I guess you would say, happened to this dude. I just trying to go for the rule of cool. I also added a whole bunch of these sort of imperfections. I can't imagine you'll be looking at these zombies a whole bunch from the back because it's a wave shooter game. So you predominantly be looking at the zombies from the front. But nonetheless, I still added detail in the back just in case. And because it's fun. Right, so having all that, I went over some of these tools. Basically just show you individually. So this is the anatomy reference, and it's made for 3D printing by Rafa Edigan. And all it is, it's like he sculpted this super high detail, super accurate model and decimated it, and he also set it up for 3D printing. So if you have 3D printer, I recommend you print it. If not, just using it here works just as well, arguably better, because you don't have to be looking back and forth because it's all in the same, plane. I only got the right hand because it's like a traditional bisection model. So the right and left hand are like the muscle things, and the left side is more of I guess the second layer, you would say. There's some muscle, but there's a lot more focus on tendons and bones. As far as eyes, I stick with the traditional sphere. Generally, when it's like a hero character, then I actually add like a little spot where the pupil would be, because it's one of those things again that we're very good at detecting Uncanny Valley, and a perfect sphere is not the way that the eyes are shaped, right? So they have like a little sort of bump like that, and I mean I'll probably spend more time actually doing it, but it's just to get the point across, and it's also more of an oval than a sphere, if that makes any sense. Yeah, so that's the detail that I go in as part of my process on making all these things. I might have a video coming out later on of me sculpting most of this. If not, it might have been corrupted, I don't know. But yeah, so it's just, I guess, to reiterate all my points, use your reference, right? But make sure you have good reference. In this case, the good reference is these models. And for me, I like just going iteratively whenever I'm making major change. So let's say at this point, I decided, oh man, I messed it up completely and it's gonna take way too long to bring it back to how it was. Then I can just go back to this, right? And also a thing to keep in mind that I find myself still messing up when it's I just make things way too jacked because I love anatomy. So just keep in mind how jacked things are going to be, because you see this old model that's like overlapping. It's substantially more muscle mass like all over the place, which is not necessarily a bad thing. It's just not what I'm going for. Yeah, that's pretty much the end of, I guess, showing you guys my process. And as far as the announcements, like I said earlier, I am working on a game with a friend that this is for. I think a Kickstarter or one of those crowdfunding platforms, we're gearing up to have things ready so we can, I guess, do a pitch and see if we can get any interest of people donating money and as far as I'm aware, the plan is to, even if we don't get a whole bunch of money, we're still gonna try and make it. We're just gonna cut back on the really cool features. And also, I made my own Patreon. I'm gonna probably put the link somewhere in the screen and as well as in the description. And all the Patreon is I'm always doing 3D models. If you're interested in supporting me, anything helps. I'm gonna have like 3 different tiers. One is just general support, and you get access to any and all pictures that I end up uploading, because I like taking high-res pictures of some of these models, and once they have textures, I'll take even higher res
pictures. Um, also, I'm a fan of 3D printing. I haven't shown a whole bunch of that here, but I intend to in the coming weeks, maybe. So I'll probably uploading some of these models themselves ready for 3D printing. Probably post cooler than an A post, because A post, I mean, it looks good enough for like a statue. If I wanted to make a bust, just cut this. But I like having dynamic poses. I'll probably do dynamic poses and post them. Once you're in like the second tier and third tier, you're gonna get like look at behind the scenes. I do plan on having all these videos that go up to YouTube be free the whole time. So I might be giving you. I'll definitely be giving you more behind the scenes things and access to polls and things of the nature. If you choose to do that. If not, it's totally cool, man. I just appreciate you watching. And as always, if you have any questions or anything, feel free to comment down below. The next video that I plan on releasing, I don't know if how the edit is gonna come up, is things I wish I knew when I started sculpting in ZBrush. Because there's a lot of things that I look back and while I'm sculpting, I'm like, man, if I had known this when I was first starting, it would have been such a game changer. And there's also other things that are like, good thing I didn't learn this till after I got fairly decent at sculpting, because it would have just destroyed my workflow and given me really bad habits. Right, so that's the end of it, guys. Catch you later. Thanks for watching, and